I will almost always start at the top and the center. Two reasons. One of them is that the top of the tree grows the most vigorous and the strongest. If you look at the new growth up here, we have 18 inches of new growth. The lower branches down below, we might get 2 or 3 inches of the same new growth every spring. So the majority of the work that we're going to be doing is going to be in the top third of the tree. Second reason to start at the top is that as you're working from the top, you kind of drop your debris down below, and then you don't have to go back and clean it up again. So it's an efficiency thing as much as anything else. Third reason for working from the top and down is that the branch structure and the width and the length of the branches at the top here is going to really relate to how long and to what shape the branches below are going to go. So we start by kind of working on and cleaning up, we call it crown of the tree. So usually this time of the year, they're pretty brittle and easy to remove without cutting. Sometimes they do require cutting though.
Now, how late in the year can you do this?
Too much later than this and you're going to start having problems because you won't have an opportunity for new buds to grow back. So what I like to do is I wait until the needles have started to grow out but haven't started to grow horizontally yet.
So they're growing up but not away from the candle.
Correct. So these new needles that are coming up here as they're growing up like this is a great time to do it. If you do it too early before the needles have formed, you're just going to get a second flush of growth and you'll have to come back and do it again. So it's a fairly small window that's usually between late May to mid-June. So somewhere between, about mid-May to mid-June is the best time to do this kind of work. Some years when it's a little warmer, you may start earlier. Some years when it's a little cooler, you can go a little later. It really is more about what you can observe within the trees. So. So most pine trees are in nature going to be a roughly triangular shape. I like to see some of the low branches kept longer because again you get that illusion of age and depth or a distance better. And just looking to see where the spaces between the branches are. You don't want to have too much space or too little space where they're not laying on top of each other, but there's some really nice layering between them. Most of the shape is kind of determined by the tree itself, and most of what I'm trying to do is emphasize what it's naturally doing more than imposing a design on it. Another one of those cases where it's really important, with any sort of pruning, to think that pay attention to what you're leaving behind more than what you're removing. If you remove all of this, what you end up with is very short, very stubby, very odd angular branches that don't have any taper. They just kind of go off and form a little knot at the end. So to maintain this sort of natural, graceful taper, we do leave quite a bit of this new growth on the ends, just shorter, smaller pieces that are going to grow into the direction we want. It's not about removal so much as it is about redirecting. It's a better way to think of it. One of the other things I'm looking for is you'll occasionally see these really, really small buds. In many cases, this may be the best branch that I want to have growing out from this particular space, so I got to be really careful when I'm doing this pruning to not break or damage these tiny little buds. So that's part of why this can become a real painstaking process. You're looking for very, very small things in a lot of cases. It's not just removing these really big candles. It's being able to decide, again, what you're keeping. And sometimes what you're keeping is a bud the size of the head of a pin. Like that. When breaking a candle off to leave it and just shortening it, I always try to break it off someplace where there are already these needles. You're more likely to get new buds to grow back from there. So by breaking it off like that and having all that new growth still available to you, versus taking it to a point here where if you break it off and there's just bare stems, you might still get some budding coming back, but it's a lot less reliable. So try to leave a little something there to grow out. That's part of the reason that breaking these is a lot better than cutting them. When you cut them, you cut all of the new needles. And so when they grow out, they're going to come out with little brown tips. So either completely remove or to break.
So Pete, what about candles that are really long? I noticed this one here. Super long guy.
Yep.
Is that just 1 year of growth?
That is. So every single one of these has emerged really since just February or so of this year. So this is all this new growth. And if we didn't take this out, one of the things that would happen is, first of all, you'd have a really long branch here, but all these branches behind it would end up being less vigorous too. It would suppress all this vigor would suppress the growth of the branches behind it. So to help maintain really uniform growth, we'll remove the most vigorous growth to help redistribute that sugar that's being pushed up by the tree's roots, or from the tree's roots. That all happened since then.
Oh, they're teeny little
Baby cones.
baby cone friends. So cute.
So about a week ago, too, all of these little orange, these are the pollen cones on the tree. About a week ago, these were just exploding with pollen everywhere. So those pollen cones then would fertilize these little seed cones. And if they were fertilized, then this would grow into a full-sized pine cone.
Cool.
Almost always remove those because scale-wise, if you had a full-size pine cone sitting, on the end of a branch of a tree like this size, it would look like a Christmas tree ornament. It wouldn't really make any sense to the scale of the tree.
So Pete, about how old is this tree?
So this tree was planted in this garden about 10 or 11 years ago, and it was probably 5 or 6 years old then. So I'm going to guess this is maybe a 15, maybe 20 years old by now. Mm-hmm. If this tree had not been maintained and pruned and groomed in this fashion, though, you'd be looking at something with a trunk that would probably be about that big and would easily be about 20 feet taller.
Oh, wow.
So this kind of really consistent, regular pruning is something that we do to really manage and control the growth and size of the tree as much as to control and manage the shape. A big part of what's happening here is we're trying to create an illusion of a bigger, older tree farther away. Leaving a lot more unpruned and unpinched from here versus taking off, pinching virtually every piece of new growth up here, at least shortening it on the top, taking a lot more from here and then less. And when I get down to these very bottom branches, outside of these really egregiously long ones, probably not going to take that much at all. So those are fine. They're not going to get so out of scale or out of growth for the tree down here. This little bud here might grow up that much taller, but that's fine in that space. And as compared to this and this compared to each other, you can see how substantially different the growth is at the top versus the bottom. Longer branches or longer shoots at the ends of the branches, that's going to allow the branch to start to grow out so that we can train it into this longer horizontal branch structure. We just constantly shorten and shorten and shorten. We end up with very stubby branches that don't really get that horizontal bend that we want them to have as a natural, as an older branch would naturally grow up. So I'm also pulling off some of the old needles. Again, that's more of a kind of a winter fall thing to do, but in some areas here, it's, you know, the tree's growth is super dense, and so it doesn't really hurt to just clarify, clean it up a little bit. These needles are more than a couple of years old anyway, so they're going to fall off fairly soon. So it's just a way of kind of grooming the tree as much as anything else, keeping it clean and tidy looking. Same thing as removing these old pollen cones, just so that we aren't seeing those. And then when you're done, the tree looks very fresh and very new and vigorous, and what you're seeing only is mostly that new, dense, fresh, this year's new growth. With the growth and the maintenance of pines being so regular and repeated, you can look at photos of gardens in Japan and Japanese gardens in the States, and in many cases you can tell what time of year it is just based on the pines. So if it's early spring, you'll see the long candles. If it's midsummer or early summer, you'll see them shortened down. If it's late in the winter, you'll see them thinned and opened out. So being able to look at that one specific thing in the garden and really see the seasonality in something that doesn't necessarily, it's not obvious unless you know what you're looking for. And so it's another great way of kind of seeing the clues and the little hidden way that the garden communicates. So one of the best ways to keep you from over-pruning your trees is have 26 of them to take care of. So then you don't have to, you know that how much time you can spend on each one. This tree here, it could take a little bit more. I could do a little bit more tuning and pinching at it, but again, 25 more trees to be worked on this year, so it's worth, you can get back to it if something grows out, if something looks funny. So it's always better to leave a little bit of something that's not done rather than do too much the first time.